Sarah. Hello, everybody. It's an honor for me to speak today at this important Euromontana event. Our mountain regions are beautiful, but they are also harbor many challenges. Today we want to discuss how we can work together to secure a sustainable future for mountain regions. I think, yes, it's working. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am 62 years old, married. I have 2 children, 4 grandchildren between 2 and 9 years. And I'm a farmer on a mountain region on 1,000-meter high. And we have now invested last year a lot of money for 2 milk robots and animal welfare standards. So we hand over our farm to our son, and during the weekend I am helping. I'm degraded now from milking cows after my political work to feeding the calves, but it's okay for me. I think it's important to be grounded if you want to be a good politician. So my political career, I started 1996 on municipal level, so in a community. After a short time in Bavarian Parliament, I was elected in the European Parliament, and I was 10 years there as agri-coordinator for the 3rd biggest group, and I was one of the rapporteurs of the Common Agriculture Policy. I was the last time here in Barcelona where I worked on the forest strategy, so I really well known about the regions where we have in Europe, and I think it's really good to find a common ground also in the mountain areas, and I will look forward. So, importance of the mountain areas are alpine farming. Alpine pasture and alpine farming in Bavaria is of central importance for the preservation of cultural landscapes in the alpine regions. There are around 4,400 mountain pastures and Alps in Bavaria. 40 of them produce cheese. I would like to inform you more about the figures. We have 2,100 mountain farmers higher than 1,000 meters, and under permanent grassland production, 37,000 hectares in my region, Allgäu. These areas on which sustainable and authentic agriculture is practiced characterize the image of our Alps and ensure biodiversity, as around 60% of these areas are designated as legal protected biotopes. Around 1.3 million people currently live in the Bavarian Alpine region. The population of the Bavarian Alpine region is relatively stable compared to the flatter regions of Bavaria, although there is often our migration in the mountain regions due to a lack of employment opportunities. Next. Tourism is one of the most important issues in our region. The small-scale cultural landscape, which is characterized by alpine farming, is an essential basis for the tourism in Bavaria's Alps. Without the work of the mountain farmers who cultivate the alpine pastures and keep the region traditional alive, a major attraction of this region would be lost. For more than half of our holiday makers, experiencing nature is the main reason for their trip. They are looking for natural landscapes, clear boundaries, varied vegetation, and a peaceful atmosphere, all of which are characterized prevented by mountain farmers. But living and working in the mountains comes with its challenge. Steep, difficult to access areas and limited infrastructure make the everyday life of mountain farmers a real labor of love. These labors often remain hidden while tourists enjoy the idyllic landscape, but this idyll would not be possible without the hard working conditions of mountain farming. The great popularity of the Alpine region also brings challenges, in particular the overuse of certain areas in popular hiking and skiing areas. Erosion, trampling damage, and the destruction of sensitive vegetation are not uncommon. Nature is damaged particularly quickly in these areas, and this damage is difficult to reverse. Here we are faced with the task of finding a balance between the protection of nature and the needs of tourists. Another major problem is the conflicts of use between tourists and agriculture. Hikers, mountain bikers, and dog owners repeatedly clash with the interests of mountain pasture farming. Fences are damaged, livestock is disturbed, and grazing animals are frightened, all of which leads to dissatisfaction among the alpine farmers and significantly impairs their work. Possible solutions from our side: visitor guidance and education. One promised way of tackling these problems is target visitor guidance. Campaigning such as Respect Your Border and Fair Bike have shown that targeted information and digital tools can be used to be better manage tourist flows. By marking alternative routes, heavily frequented areas can be relieved and sensitive natural areas protected. Education is particularly important. They need to understand that alpine farming is not just a tourist backdrop, but a real working and living environment. Through clear communication and information, we can raise awareness among tourists and avoid conflicts. Another opportunity lies in the concept of sustainable tourism. More and more guests are looking for and from of travel that combines nature experience with respect for local traditions and support for regional economy. This is a great opportunity to harmonize alpine farming and tourism. The alpine pastures not only serve as hosts and accommodation providers, but also offer experience that are deeply rooted in tradition. Events such as Alpabtrieb or Viehscheid create an authentic connection between tourists and Bavarian culture. These events offer guests the unique opportunity to experience the close connection between humans and animals, between agriculture and tradition at the first hand. Such experience not only promote and understanding the work on the mountain pastures, but also respect for regional culture and history. Next slide. In the mountain region in Bavaria are among the most beautiful landscapes in Europe, but behind this picturesque backdrop lay major challenges, especially for the people who live and work there. Agriculture in Bavarian Alps is not only a traditional branch of economy, it also plays a central role in preserving the cultural landscape and the regional economy, especially skilled craftspeople. There are around 10,300 mountain farmers in the Bavarian Alps, which work on 260,000 hectares of land. These farmers run their farms under often difficult conditions, from extreme weather conditions to steep slopes and limited infrastructure. They make an important contribution, not only to the preservation of the landscape, but also to the regional economy. The farmers produce high-quality food that is known and appreciated far beyond the region. However, the lack of young talents is major the problem. Fewer and fewer young people are deciding to take over their parents' farms. The structural change in agriculture means that smaller farms in particular having to give up. This exodus is worrying. Last year alone in Bavaria, 1.5% of farms ceased tradition. This is not only a loss for the families, but also for the entire region. When people move away from the mountain villages, not only lose labor, but also important social structure, you know exactly, firefighters, a lot of voluntary works are in the village. The Bavarian government has recognized this problem and offers special training programs to promote young talents. These programs are designed to motivate young people to take on the challenge of mountain farming and choose this valuable occupation. It is important that we preserve our traditions by supporting young people who are enthusiastic about farming. Despite all the challenges, mountain farming remains an important part of the local economy. Through the production of milk, cheese, meat, the farms make a significant contribution to regional value creation. Products such as Allgäu cheese are recognized worldwide and stand for quality and sustainability. But without income opportunities, even more people will leave the mountain regions. To counteract this, we need to create incentives that make it attractive to stay in the mountain regions. Funding from Europe, support from national government, and recognizing mountain farmers for the additional work in landscape conservation are crucial to stopping the exodus. Let's work together to keep these regions alive for the people who live there and for all of us who benefit from their work and commitment. Alpine Dairy Cooperation. The Alpine Dairy Cooperation in Bavaria's Alps are a central component of the regional economy to have a long tradition. They are not only producing of high quality dairy products, but also an important block for the preservation of our mountain farming. Farmers work closer together in these cooperatives. Most of their milk comes from the cows that are kept on the mountain pastures in species-appropriate grazing conditions. The cooperatives collect the milk from the participating farms and proceed it in cheese, butter, yogurt, in alpine dairies. Products are valued far beyond. 2023, you can read the figures on the slide. We produced 9.6 million tons of milk, a significant proportion. Trade is one of the issues, but the other one is the direct consume from our tourists. And I know a lot of cooperatives in Bavaria, the smaller Sennereien, they have a milk price for higher than €1 per liter milk for the farmers. So the next slide is climate change and preserving traditional practices. Climate change poses serious challenges for mountain regions that we can no longer ignore. Longer periods of drought, extreme weather events, and the shift of the seasons are fundamentally changing life and work in Alps. These changes will require our farmers to adapt and invest heavily in order to continue their important work. Prolonged periods of drought are the central problem that we encounter time and again. These put a lot of pressure on the water supply for livestock and agriculture. Mainly alpine pastures do not have a central water supply, which is why farmers increasingly have to invest in decentralized system. This means that springs have to be tapped or water pipes laid to remove pastures. Such measures are expensive and time-consuming, but essential in order to secure pasture farming in the future. At the same time, extreme weather events such as heavy rain, avalanches, and increasing mountain pastures have an important protective function here. Not only do they store precipitation and gradually release the water, but they also help to prevent avalanches. The management of mountain pastures prevents these areas from becoming overgrown and thus more susceptible to erosion and avalanches. Bavaria has recognized the importance of this protection. Every year, around 200,000 euros are made available for the preservation of pasture land in the Alps. But that alone is not enough. Additional measures are needed to stabilize the alpine pastures. Bavaria therefore invests 1.7 million euros annually in projects that help to protect these values against the effects of the climate change. The avalanche barriers cost a lot. They are between 150 and 500,000 euro per hectare. Nevertheless, they are an essential investment in the safety of the people and the infrastructure in mountain regions. But protection against extreme weather events is only one side of the coin. We must also work more sustainable with our nature in order to be able to counter these changes in the long term. This means that we must continue to promote alpine farming and find innovative ways to keep our mountain regions alive and resilient. Climate change will not go away on its own, and it's up to us to act with foresight. Bavarian government is already active in these areas. In addition to financial aid, training and advice is offered to help farmers adapt to the new conditions. It's important that we continue to expand this support and to promote new ideas on how we can deal with the climate change. Animal welfare in mountain pasture. Grazing creates a sustainable link between livestock farming and landscape conservation. The animal graze at the areas keep them open and prevents scrub encroachment. This open management ensures that important habitats and numerous plants and animal species are preserved. So you know exactly, it's all around the mountain areas the same. We need the grazing of our cows and the sheep and the goats, so it's really important that we support small farmers, and we need ultimately more support and financial support and working with them. The next slide is protection measures on predators. The return of predators to our mountain regions is an issue that is of great concern to farmers. Large carvinows, wolves, bears are returning to our forests and succeed for nature conservation, but at the same time the challenge for mountain farming, this returns involves a balancing act. For many farmers in the Alps whose livelihoods depend on livestock farming, predators are really a threat. The pastures in the mountains are often difficult to access and the animals are spread over large areas. This makes it difficult to implement effective protection measures. You know exactly, we have fences, cannot be erected everywhere on steep slopes, and the use of livestock guarding dogs is not always an option in areas with, who is used by tourists. The conflict between nature conservation and agriculture use is clearly visible here. Although financial aid is available in Bavaria to implement these protective measures, this often does, but it's often that the real costs are not actually covered. This financial burden is hardly too bearable for many farms, especially when you consider that yield in mountain farming are lower than in flattering regions. It is therefore crucial that we find a fair balance as a society. Predators must not be seen as a blanket threat, but in the protection of agriculture must also be prioritized. Ecological importance of mountain pastures, the preservation of alpine cultural landscape is not a question of aesthetic, but a central concern of nature conservation. Without regular grazing, many areas would become overgrown and species richness would decline sharply. However, nature conservation in the Alps is facing major challenges. New regulation and strict environmental protection requirements have become increasingly important in recent years. Many of these measures are important to ensure the long-term protection of these regions. At the same time, however, we must not forget that the people who have lived and worked in the Alps for generations created the landscape as we know it's today in the first place. Nature conservation cannot work without the people who cultivate these regions. Another problem that we are increasingly observing in the mountains is the so-called fully comprehensive insurance mentality of many visitors. More and more people expect nature to be completely safe and that all risks are covered. This attitude is not only leads to a dangerous behavior, but also puts a strain on the rescue services who are often sent out on dangerous missions. Our mountains are unpredictable, and anyone who behaves unreasonably is not only putting themselves in danger, but also others. It's up to all of us to respect the ecological importance of the Alps and the mountain pastures, and at the same time to harmonize the necessary protection of nature with us. Need for support. I think this is one of my most important slides. Let me start with the European level. The European Union Common Agriculture Policy is a central pillar of support. Through direct payments, farmers in less favored regions, such as the mountains, receive a compensatory allowance that partially compensate for higher costs and lower yields. The CIP ensures that mountain farming is not only maintained as a livelihood for farming families, but also an important factor for nature conservation and the maintenance of our cultural landscape. The federal government plays an important role at the national level, particularly through programs to promote rural development. One example of this is the Joint Task Agriculture Structure and Coast Protection. The Bavarian government also makes a significant contribution to promoting mountain farming. A central component of this is the Bavarian Mountain Farmers Program. This program supports farmers in the mountain regions with direct payments in order to counteract the natural disadvantages. In addition, the projects are funded that focus on the preservation of cultivated landscapes and nature conservation, such as measures to clear bushes or stabilize pasture land. Contractual nature conservation also plays an important role. Here, farmers can receive targeted support through voluntary agreement, which the nature conservation authorities in order to maintain and preserve threatened habitats. So we have more than 50 different measures where the farmers can choose. Bavarian main funding programs in nature conservation within the CAP are in the second pillar. The Bavarian contract-based conservation program, whose core element in the cooperation between the farmers and nature conservation authorities. The funding area currently covers about 164,000 hectares, representing 5.5% of our agriculture area in Bavaria, and we want to increase to 180,000. As of 2024, more than 29,000 farmers participate. Together, they receive an annual funding of 90 million euros. Bavarian contract-based conservation program in forests started 2023. More than 2,500 forest owners with the funding of 11 million euros can use it. And last but not least, we started 1985 with the Landscape Management Organization. Now we have 71 organizations between communities, NGOs, and farmers. Landcare Europe is here the European organization. The financial aid is therefore not only a contribution to securing agriculture businesses, but also an invest in the future of our mountain regions. And it's everyone's interest to continue and expand this support so that mountain farmers can continue their important work. And let's work together to ensure that the mountain regions have a sustainable and livable future, both for the people who live and work there and for the many who visit them and enjoy their beauty. Thank you so much for listening my speech. Thank you.